All right, so moving on, we are going to want to create a system to identify teams, and then we will be able to apply damage based off of whether you are an ally or an enemy. So how are we going to do this? We're going to use a system called interfaces. Excuse me. So, what is an interface? Well, at its most basic level, we're going to just think of it as a system of questions, essentially. So, in this example, we have what we're going to call the animal interface. Inside of it, it stores only two things. What are you and what sound do you make? Now, over here with our little dog, we'll call it the dog actor. The dog actor implements this interface and gains access to these two questions, wherein it can uniquely answer them. What are you? A dog. What sound do you make? Bark. A cat's actor could also do this and answer it uniquely. It is a cat that meows. Now, the cool thing about this is if on a separate blueprint, we are running some code and we need to ask the question, or we come across an actor. A good example would be we have some type of an overlap event. So we overlap with this actor right here. We'll get a reference that comes out, and we can actually plug it into our. Let me just do this. Yoink. What are you question? And this can be called anywhere in any blueprint. We can ask, what are you? And they don't have to implement it. You only have to implement it if you want to add and store data, essentially. So we're in some separate blueprint. We'll just call this this is just blueprint. Oh, I'm already spelling things wrong. So the blueprint's running some things, and then it overlaps, and it needs to ask, what are you? And because we have a reference, it would then come, and it would give that answer of a cat. And this is done all without casting. So this is the big idea, is this is going to allow us to avoid heavy casting and instead just interact with interfaces that in our example will be actors are implementing. Now, this probably doesn't make a lot of sense, and that's understandable. So we're going to just continue on, and it should make more sense once we actually utilize this. So first thing we need to do is create an interface. I've done this in a blueprint libraries folder, interface library, right click, blueprint, and blueprint interface. I've named it tag interface, opened it up, and we have added in two functions. And this is all we see. It's not a lot. The first is get gameplay tags, and the second is add gameplay tags. If we double click it, we open up into this read only, which is a little bit annoying because you can't do anything with it, right? Like we want to run code, right? We have to separate the idea. This is not a function library like this. This is a function library. I have a print gameplay tags function that I can call in any blueprint, and it will run this code. This tag interface doesn't do that. It works similar but different, and we'll see those differences. So we can still select this, scroll down. It gives us two options. We can add inputs and outputs. For our get gameplay tags, we're going to add an output set to the gameplay tag container type right there. And on add, we're going to have an input of just a gameplay tag right there. Perfect. And that's it. That's all we can do with this interface within the actual the interface class. So we can move on. We're going to go to our character base, or whatever your character is, and we're going to actually implement the interface. We can go to class settings. There will be an interface option. There are inherited interfaces, which are inherited from parent classes. So because this is a PaperZD character, it already inherited a PaperZD sequence source automatically. That was done through the plugin. We want to actually implement an interface, and we are going to add that newly made tag interface. I already have it added in here. We'll also see I have a generic team agent interface. You might, the way I got this, I think it's a plugin you add in from Unreal. However, this does not work in the traditional sense in which we would imagine it to work. We would expect a team agent interface to give us a way to identify teams. All that does is give you a way. It's more of a C++ interface. So this interface within the blueprints allows you to work with the C++ side of things. You can't actually add or create teams. It just lets you pull information from C++. If you're working in C++, this interface has a lot more capabilities. However, we're not, so we have to create our own. Okay, perfect. Now that we've implemented it, make sure you compile, and you'll gain access to this interface drop-down menu. The first thing we're going to do is double-click Add Gameplay Tags. It will create an event called Add Gameplay Tags, in which we can run code. So it's a bit different from a function library. A function library holds all of the code inside of it, whereas an interface is just giving us an event where we can run code. Okay, that's something. So we're going to continue onward. We'll see where this becomes really powerful once we actually deal with our spawn projectile notify, because that's what we're going to add teams for. Okay, so all we're going to do, event add gameplay tags, add gameplay tag. We need to create a new variable called gameplay tag container, and we're going to have gameplay tag connected to tag. Now, we do want to add a default variable called actor or pawn. Pawn might be better. And that's just by adding new gameplay tag and then selecting actor. Since this is within our parent class, this will then be passed down to all of its children. All children will inherit this gameplay tag container with a default value of actor or pawn, if you choose to name it that. And they won't actually inherit this code, but because we use that parent to child relationship, if we only ever reference the parent, we'll gain access to this. Essentially, it's gonna make more sense, I promise. So we can now open up the get gameplay tags, and it will look similar to this. You just won't have this plugged in, and all you need to plug in was that get gameplay tag container, or the gameplay tag container, into the gameplay tag container. So now what we've done is we've created two functions, an event and a function, that where in any other blueprint we can now fire this code essentially independently. So we can be in something else. We'll be able to interact with the interface, which will then fire this code. Great. Still not making a lot of sense. That's okay. We're going to continue onward. We're going to go into our characters. I have my two types of characters. I have player characters and I have enemy characters. Do not need this. So, enemy characters, I'm going to select that. I am going to come to interfaces. I will select get gameplay tags. We do not need to worry about add gameplay tags, just get gameplay tags. Then we need to pull up that newly made variable of get gameplay tag container. Perfect. And we want to add in as a default a team enemies. So we need to make another couple tags and subclasses of enemy and players. And we'll add, because this is our enemy character base, we'll add that it is an enemy. Now, any child created from this blueprint class will automatically have in its details, we can search gameplay tag, gameplay tag container, there it was. It will automatically have that enemies inside of it. Now, similar, we will do that for the player character. We need to make sure to do the get gameplay tags, and we want to add that as a team.players. Perfect. The next thing we're going to do is within our projectile base, we're going to add the same add gameplay tags. We need to create another gameplay tag container in our projectile base, create some type of a tag called like projectiles, and then connect gameplay tag to tag. Get gameplay tags, we'll just have gameplay tags connected to gameplay tag container. Okay, now we're going to actually utilize this interface. So, inside of our spawn projectile notify on the isValid side, we are going to pull off and search add gameplay tags, and we see that we have this tag interface add gameplay tags. If we hover over it, it says it's a message. This does nothing if the target does not implement the required interface. The target does not implement the required interface. We select it, we're given a target. So we don't need to add an interface into our notify. All blueprints will be able to interact with an interface, but if the target, whatever this target is, doesn't actually implement the interface, it'll do nothing. So our target needs to be the return value, which, because this is a spawn projectile, the expectation is that we're going to plug in some type of class that will be a projectile. And now over here, we have added that interface into all of our projectiles. So what does that do? Well, because we are using our add gameplay tags, we can create a new variable in the notify called team and plug that in. And we see I've done that right here. Now that is going to let us, if we open up our characters, adventure, and source, if I go into bow, select the projectile, I can now assign a team to the projectile. And I've selected, because this is a player character, when this arrow shoots, it will be a part of the player's team. This is all assuming that this character will only be a player for now. And then alternatively, in something like an enemy, we'll see that this assumption is this team will be this character will be of team enemies. So any projectile made should be an enemy projectile. Now, how does that get added to the projectile? Well, because we utilize this, it's passing in a gameplay tag, which we saw we just added. I should have left that open. So we have this gameplay tag. I've selected team enemies. So when a projectile is spawned, it's getting this. It's passing it into here with the target of the projectile. So we can remember this. This is team enemies. So we're imagining this is team enemies. It's getting passed into here, which is then coming into our projectile base because it is the target. And it's adding a gameplay tag. Now that gameplay tag is still being passed through as that enemy tag. And it's coming in, it's adding to a gameplay tag container. That gameplay tag container should now contain projectiles and team enemies when this code is executed. We can test that by running a little bit of code. So we're going to, let's say, we're not going to worry about that one. We can just go ahead and do this over here. We can utilize also our get gameplay tag. So this is in the notify still. So now the assumption is we've passed all this stuff through. The interface will allow us to add this tag into the projectile base, but not the actual projectile base, because the target will actually be whatever our projectile was. So it'll have a direct reference to the projectile itself, which is underneath projectile base, which will allow it to run the add gameplay tags. It's a little bit confusing. I'm sorry. It's just, once again, the beauty of using parent and child blueprints. And now we can also do get gameplay tags to see if it's functioned, if it's worked properly. So we have the target. So I've done just get gameplay tags, that other function we made. The target will still be that actor. And then I am printing gameplay tags. This is a function I've made. I will share it down below. It runs just a whole bunch of different stuff to print out all of the tags in a gameplay tag container. Okay, perfect. So now the assumption is when we fire a projectile, it will spawn in, it will get a tag added to it, and then we will get to print out all of those tags. I just need to unplug this. Okay, perfect. So now if I come in here, we're going to see it up in the top left when I shoot. Look at that. This is a tag of projectiles and team players. And that was because I said this is a player. And then we can actually fire the cultist. I have a manual control. He shoots, and we see that is a projectile of team enemies. Excellent. That's exactly what we want, because now we can differentiate the projectiles of enemies from the projectiles of players. And then we can apply damage accordingly. If a enemy projectile hits the player, we need to apply damage. If a player's projectile hits an enemy, we need to apply damage. So we'll do that in the next upcoming videos. We need to cover health components first, but I hope that kind of makes sense. Interfaces are weird. They're just you got to mess around with them a little bit to understand. The interface itself is just essentially questions, right? It's two functions, and that's all they are. It's a unique question. It has its own unique little output or input, and then each of our blueprints that implement that interface can interact with it uniquely to then allow in other blueprints that don't implement the interface, they can talk to the interface, which talks back to whatever target it has, and if it implements it, it will get data out of it, essentially. Sorry, this is a pretty confusing video. I hope it works for you guys. It should work. Everything has worked for a long time for me, so that is adding in teams. So let's go. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm sure there will be questions. I'm always in my Discord to answer questions. I try to stay as active as possible. I live a busy life myself, so I will get back when I can.